Hello, and a very warm welcome to Friday Spiritual Lectures. So this week's motto was, I offer myself a hand of friendship. Why is this important? Why should we actively be a friend to ourselves? And I do mean actively, not just being blasé about who we are and how we treat ourselves and thinking it's enough. It's often said that we treat strangers better than we treat ourselves. I mean, for instance, if someone's invited to a party at your house via a friend, you don't know them, but you go out of your way to be kind, generous, and warm to them. You do everything you can to make sure that their needs are met and that they feel welcome within your home setting. You wouldn't criticize them. Likewise, if you visit someone else's property, you'll be greeted in the same way and made to feel so loved and special. The assumption is always that the stranger is a good person, a nice person, and is worth investing our time and energy in. And then look at our friendships. We invest in them, do our best to keep them alive. If we hurt a friend, we apologize, and then we do everything we can in order to make it up to them. On their birthdays, we celebrate with them, and we're there to comfort them, forgive them if they make a mistake. We hold them up as an example of wise counsel, and we celebrate their successes. And we always offer them a hand of support whenever they need it. So what happens with ourselves? Why don't we greet ourselves each morning as though we're a dear friend? Why don't we apologize to ourselves if we make a mistake? Forgive ourselves? How come we don't celebrate our own successes or even cheer ourselves on as we face our next hurdle? How come we are treated by ourselves as the lowest of the low? Right from when we are young, we're always taught to put every other person before ourselves, giving us the very clear message that our needs are less important than someone else's. To neglect a stranger or a friend or a family member is shocking and rude. But to neglect ourselves? Well, that's okay. We need to turn this around and realise that all our needs, all our desires are equally valid and worthy, and that there's no hierarchy of people, no one better than another, and hence no one's needs are better than another, unless of course in a vulnerable group. But why do we find it so hard to be kind to ourselves? Because we have that inner voice that constantly tells us that we don't deserve more, that we're never good enough. But I ask you, who are we trying to measure ourselves against? That's the question. Generally, we're trying to compete with those who show us a facade of perfection. Well, that's a measure that we can never compete against. We get this idea in our brain that life is supposed to be perfect because we are surrounded by images of perfection. But perfection is impossible, and it's an unneeded target. Life is about living, not about achieving the impossible. We wouldn't expect our friends to be perfect, and yet we apply these rules of perfection to ourselves. We also believe that if we're kind to ourselves, we may become lazy, unmotivated. But we go through cycles in our energy. And perhaps when we're not motivated, it's not because we're being lazy. It's just because we're giving ourselves the time and space we need to integrate our experiences. We wouldn't push our friends forward constantly and call them lazy. So when you next think about yourself with cruelty and harshness, believing that you are not worthy of kindness or generosity, just think of how you would treat a friend in that position. What kind and wise word would you offer to them? And then apply this to yourself. It will feel weird at first, but that's not an excuse to stop. Be your best friend, not your worst enemy. And then you'll see how you actually want to spend time with yourself and not always divert yourself with mindless tasks and entertainment. Always reach out a hand of friendship to who you are. Everything in your life changes when you do that. So I thank you so much for joining me here today and for listening to my little lectures. And I look forward so much to being with you again. In the meantime, I wish you a wonderful week. Light blessings. Bye-bye.